Welcome back to Open Line, talking about the Safekeeper Law in Tennessee. Basically, people are being put into solitary confinement, people who have not been convicted of a crime. These are people that county jails aren't able to deal with for whatever reason. They may have a mental illness. You mentioned they may be pregnant in some cases. Whatever the case may be, they're transferred to the state, and then the state puts them in solitary confinement. There's several comments on our Facebook page. Some are worth reading, others are not. But one is from Patricia. She's just asking again, who is in solitary confinement? And if she's asking that, then let's just break that down again. Who exactly are we talking about?
Right, right. And that's an excellent question. In a solitary confinement in the prison system, you know, in the state of Tennessee, you're going to have safekeepers. That's the people who are being sent from the county jail. But then you also have other people who fall under different categories, people who are in administrative segregation, people who are in protective custody, people like that as well. And are they always safekeepers? Are they always people awaiting trial? They have not been convicted. Is that true or not? The vast majority. Every so often you might have a safekeeper who's gone to trial and has been convicted, and now they're waiting sentencing. But that is such a brief amount of time where they're a safekeeper for that length of time. You know, the vast majority are awaiting trial, so they have not been convicted of a crime.
Let's go to Brittany. Hello, Brittany.
Yes.
What's on your mind? Go right ahead.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Winters. I'm interested. I'm reading through a lot of these comments, and I see people, you know, saying, well, they're guilty, like they should stay in jail and things like that. But right. I guess my question is, you know, if they were not a safekeeper, what would their jail experience actually be, and how is that different than this solitary confinement?
That's an excellent question, Brittany. If they were not a safekeeper, then they would be in their local county jail and be considered in general population there. They would have access to a variety of services. They might be able to work to earn, you know, some money, or good days, or good days doesn't make any sense for this population, but you know, they would be able to eat with other people. They would be able to socialize and interact, and be able to use the phone on a regular basis, be able to have recreation much more frequently and to a greater degree than what is afforded to someone in solitary confinement. That's an excellent question. They would not be so restricted.
Would these county jails not say, we're doing this for their own protection? For what, in some cases, you know, again, if they're mentally ill or whatever, we can't handle them. Mm-hmm. If they're in the general population, bad things could happen.
Yeah, you know, the Department of Correction, I think, is smart to be concerned about placing safekeepers in the general population at the prison. And I think, you know, there's a liability issue there that they need to consider. And I think that it's a good choice not to place them in general population, but I do believe that they have other options where they can create maybe a small pod or a portion of a unit where safekeepers can be and interact as if they were in a jail setting. That's certainly a possibility. They just have to be creative and maybe think outside the box.
Let's go to William. Hello, William.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I think the system is broken. You know, there is no way people being locked up every day. You know, we have like 2 million people behind bars. And United States is 300 million, more than China. China only 600 locked up. So it's a business issue here. It has nothing to do with what people, you know, done. You know, if they called me, I was the one who locked up for 11 days. if they called me that I did something, I could have go there by myself, but I would be paid for nothing. And so all these are business issues. These people controlling other people's lives so that they can make money. Only few people make crimes, but all these crimes are being created by government. You know, I have a different feeling, you know, how I will treat police if they pull me over, how I will treat a politician. I've been calling them, Washington, D.C., Scott DeJarle, O'Brien, Cherry, and governor office. I called them. I went down there and I met with the speaker, Mr. Orwell. Nothing has been done because it's how the system is. If they see you different, you belong here. If I was the son of a governor, I would not have been arrested. If my parents were a judge or a lawyer, I wouldn't have been the same too.
All right, let's talk about some of what you're saying. I appreciate your call. As I said, this issue sheds light on many different issues. He's talking about millions in prison, more in prison here in the United States than in other countries, including China. Again, you worked there. You saw some stuff. You know, what stands out to you in the time that you worked there? What stands out to you?
That's a good question, and I appreciate William's statements, and I would like to address one thing that he had said, but I like your question as well. You know, working in a solitary confinement unit, as a clinical therapist, you're interacting with people who are suffering. And you see this suffering, and there is very little that you can do about that. As a clinical therapist, I can only do so much, and the suffering is because of the environment, as opposed to anything that is happening in their world, mental illness or a medical condition. Those things can be stabilized. Those things I can help with, but there was nothing that I could do to alleviate the suffering that comes from solitary confinement. And I think that was the most difficult piece for me, is not being able to affect the kind of change that I wanted to affect while I was there. And that's why I continued after I left to try to advocate for people in solitary confinement.
You were, again, mental health provider at Tennessee Prison for Women. Is the care enough? Do you think you were able to give enough care? Or is that something that needs to be looked at as well?
You know, I had a great team. I got to admit, I had a great team at TPFW. I had great support. I had colleagues that were just as committed as me. We did some great work together. We treated a lot of patients, and we treated them very well. But there's only a limit. There's a limit there where you start pushing up against the environmental conditions, and there's nothing you can do about that. When you've got somebody who is in an inhumane condition and they're being treated in a certain way that makes their mental illness or their medical condition worse, and you can't seem to, there's nothing you can do. You just try to treat that the best that you can and try to advocate within the system and outside the system to try to make a difference. And that is where we are right now, right? I mean, that's the product of that advocacy work, that early advocacy work is now, that's what you're seeing now. And that's something to be proud of.
This has certainly shed light on the issue. It is being addressed by lawmakers.
It is.
How unusual is the state of Tennessee in the way it does this?
There's no state in the entire United States that treats safekeepers in this way. There are only a handful of other states that have safekeeper laws. And they somehow, other states, through a variety of different creative measures, have found a way to not lock safekeepers up in solitary confinement. Tennessee is the only state that has seen fit to treat this population in this way, and even when challenged, will defend and justify that choice.
They'll say, yeah, again, they're getting access to the best care they can get, and and that kind of thing. And they're keeping them safe. Obviously, that's the name, the safekeepers. They're keeping them safe. But you're saying the impacts of being in there in solitary confinement are just too great.
It's too great, and there's all kinds of evidence that suggests that solitary confinement is psychologically damaging. And I have to say that there's anecdotal evidence coming out that I'm hearing from a lot of people, and I wish that somebody would look into this, is the potentially permanent, and I want to repeat that word, permanent psychological damage from solitary confinement. You've got innocent citizens being placed in solitary confinement, and at least anecdotally, there are some that are coming out of that experience with symptoms that are not going away, that are directly related to the solitary confinement conditions. And you know, the lady who was highlighted in that article talked about that, about how she still struggles with the symptoms that were generated by that environment.
And now tell me that story. What do you mean there? There's a lady in the article, just so that we all understand, generally speaking, what happened there?
Well, you know, she was a safekeeper, and she spoke out in this article, and the article really highlights some of the problems that she's had since she's left. She's out and she's free and she's living her life, but there is still some potentially permanent psychological damage that she's carrying with her. And I'm really concerned about that and what that says about how solitary confinement is, you know, it's a mentality that people have that is kind of akin to incarceration in general, that we need to punish bad behavior. And I'm not necessarily arguing against that. What I am saying is, let's be very deliberate in how we look at what our response to that, and whether or not it might serve our purpose better to look at how can we help this person. They have some needs. We need to address these needs, whether it's mental health, whether it's rehabilitation, whether it's substance use, whatever the case may be. And I think the safekeepers have gotten caught up in that system where people just throw them in and not really worry about it anymore.
Right. Because they stay there on average almost a year. They're staying there a long time.
Oh yeah, there's a safekeeper at Tennessee Prison for Women right now who's been there for, if not right at 4 years, it's either slightly under or slightly over 4 years as a safekeeper awaiting trial.
And how is that happening? That's another issue with the criminal justice system that this kind of points to.
Yeah.
But they're waiting 4 years for their trial.
They're waiting 4 years, and that brings in, and this is what I wanted to talk about. What William said was this, I mean, we've got this cash bail system that pretty much forces people who are too poor to make bail to stay in jail, sometimes for months and years awaiting trial, while other people who have the money to afford bail get to sit at home. And there's something dangerously wrong with that concept that we need to be looking at. And that's the reason why safekeepers are being detained.
All right, let's take a break. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.